The evening sky over Marlowe town had always carried a muted glow, a soft amber haze that lingered at the edges of winter. But that night, the cold was harsher than usual, sharp, unfriendly, biting at the skin like the whispered judgment of strangers. Daniel Hartley walked with long, determined strides, his coat tugged tightly around him, not because he felt the cold, but because he needed the walk to drown the echo of his own thoughts. He had left the Hartley mansion behind once again, choosing the quiet roads over the suffocating warmth of wealth, expectations, and inheritance documents that had become heavier than his own heartbeat. Daniel wasn't running from anything specific, just from everything in general. Yet fate had an uncanny way of presenting what one never asked for. At the corner of Bridge Street, by the old carved fountain half covered in frost, sat a girl curled into herself. Barely visible. Barely breathing. Barely holding on to anything at all. She looked like a piece of night that had been forgotten by the world. Her clothes were thin, soaked at the edges from the melting snow beneath her. Her dark hair hid her face, trembling strands clinging to her cheeks. Daniel almost walked past her, almost. But then he heard it. A sound. A whisper. A plea that wasn't meant for anyone but still reached him. Please, don't throw me out again. I can warm your bed. Please, anyone. Just tonight. The words were broken, desperate, trembling with humiliation and fear. She wasn't speaking to him. She wasn't speaking to anyone. She was speaking to the ghosts of every door that had shut on her, every cruel hand that had shoved her away. Daniel froze. His breath caught in his throat. Slowly, he stepped toward her, crouching beside the shivering figure. Are you okay? He asked softly. She flinched like a wounded animal. For a moment, she lifted her face. And Daniel's chest tightened. Her eyes were swollen, red-rimmed, but stunning in their softness. Her cheeks were hollowed from hunger, but her features delicate. She wasn't older than 21. She looked like someone who had once belonged to dreams but had been dragged far away from them. She blinked at him as if unsure he was real. Are you here, to send me away too? No, Daniel said immediately. I just want to know if you're all right. Her lips quivered. No one ever wants that. They only want something from me. I can't. I can't do that anymore. She buried her face in her arms. Daniel swallowed. What's your name? Leora, she whispered. The name suited her, it sounded like something that meant light. But right now, all light seemed to have abandoned her. Daniel took a slow breath. Leora, look at me. She hesitated, then lifted her face again. You said you could warm someone's bed, Daniel said gently, making sure his voice carried no judgment, only understanding. But you don't have to offer that. Not to anyone. Not ever again. A tear rolled down her cheek. Then why would you help me? Because you need help, he replied simply. And because you shouldn't have to beg to exist. She stared at him, longer, deeper, searching for cruelty, for a trap, for the usual ugliness the world had shown her. But she found none. Still, her voice trembled. If I don't offer anything, people just walk away. Well, Daniel stood and extended his hand toward her. I'm not walking away. And I don't want anything. Except maybe to make sure you don't freeze to death on this street. Her fingers inched back, hesitant. Why you aren't expecting me to sleep with you? No, he said firmly. I don't need you to warm my bed. I'd rather make sure your heart is warm first. Her breath hitched. Her eyes widened. Something inside her, something fragile, something long dead, flickered painfully. Please, Daniel urged, come with me. Just to someplace warm. She slowly reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were ice. The moment he felt their coldness, his jaw tightened with anger, not at her, but at the world that had left her like this. He wrapped his coat around her thin shoulders, guiding her gently. Leora stumbled a little, unused to the feeling of kindness supporting her weight. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Because no one should ever have to beg to be valued. As they walked together through the snow-dusted street, something shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, like the first crack of thawing ice. Leora glanced up at him again, watching the steady lines of his face, the sincerity in his eyes. "I'm scared," she confessed. "I know," he murmured, "but you're safe with me now." Her steps softened. Her breathing steadied. And somewhere, hidden beneath layers of hurt and frost, her wounded heart trembled with the tiniest spark of warmth. Daniel didn't know that this moment would become the turning point of his life, that the girl he helped from the frozen street would someday melt the walls he'd spent years building. He only knew one thing. He was never letting Leora freeze again. Not in the cold. Not in loneliness. Not in despair. And for the first time in a long time, Leora dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was worth saving. Morning sunlight crept gently through the tall windows of Daniel Hartley's penthouse, painting soft golden lines across the carpet and warming the quiet room where Leora finally slept without fear for the first time in months, maybe years. She lay curled beneath a thick blanket, her breathing deep and even, her tired face illuminated in a glow that made her look almost peaceful, like a fragile flower that had finally found a patch of sun after endless winters. Daniel stood by the doorway, leaning against the frame, watching her with an expression he rarely showed the world, tenderness mixed with silent fury. Not fury at her, but at whatever had driven her to the point where she believed offering her body was the only way to stay alive. He didn't wake her. He couldn't. It was the first time she looked unafraid. Daniel quietly walked to the kitchen, made coffee, but even the warmth of the mug couldn't distract him from the image of Leora trembling in the snow, whispering words that haunted him. "Don't throw me out. I'll warm your bed." No girl should ever have to say such things. Not out of choice. Not out of survival. Months ago, Daniel might have walked by. Last night, he couldn't. He sat at the table, fingers drumming the wood. He wasn't used to hosting strangers, or anyone, really. His world was small, cold, and deliberate. People didn't enter unless he allowed them. And yet this girl had entered without even knocking. She had walked straight into the silent corners of his heart he thought no one would ever touch. A soft sound reached him. Her footsteps. Slow. Bare. Hesitant. He looked up. Leora stood at the edge of the hallway wearing the oversized sweater he'd left for her. It swallowed her frame completely, making her look even smaller. Her hair was still damp from her shower, falling around her face in gentle waves. She looked human again. A little alive. A little hopeful. "Good morning," Daniel said softly. Leora froze, almost like she wasn't sure she was allowed to answer. "Gee, good morning," her voice trembled. "Did you sleep well?" he